Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Better Call Saul Season 6, Episode 7. It's called Plan and Execution. So full spoilers for the episode, as always. You know, the titles have all had kind of double meanings. This one might be the most layered, in the sense that...
It becomes very clear at the end.
Well, not only is it a literal execution, in a manner of speaking, but there's actually like 3 plans being executed over the course of the episode. You get the main one with Saul and Kim that's been going.
Lalo's plan.
Lalo's plan's being planned and it's being executed. And then you've also got even like Mike and Gussie's like plan to try and trap Lalo also being executed. There's a lot of planning and executing going on in this episode.
The episode lives up to its title.
Yes, you can't fault that. So I will say I did unfortunately receive a minor spoiler before I watched this episode.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And it's Connor's fault. So
how's it my fault?
Because I had to look for news before I watched it because of your weird rearranging schedules this week, and as a result, I saw something that I wish I hadn't seen. Now, I didn't know who it was going to be, but I knew there was a death. So all episode, I was waiting for death.
Well, that's not really my responsibility.
It's your fault. I'm blaming you. I'm holding you personally responsible.
You could have watched this and then looked for news.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to get the legwork done before I sat down and enjoyed a TV show that I greatly love consuming. Wanted to relax and not worry about the fact that I'd have to research after it.
You should be sorry.
Look.
Do you know what? I was living in fear yesterday because there's an absolute dick at work who I do not like, and he doesn't like me. And when someone mentioned him, I hadn't seen
why.
No. This kid's a little shit. Like he is, you know, like one of the few people I truly hate in this world.
I love him already.
Yeah. And then someone was talking about Saul because obviously it had been, it had aired, and someone mentioned him that I'd not seen the episode yet. So all day he was threatening to spoil me with it. I had to literally just like go to a completely different room, to a completely different floor, just to avoid him, just so because he would. And I was like, you bastard comes and speaks to me. I swear to God. I'm amazed I managed to go into this episode as blind as I did.
Yeah, I think I said full spoilers. Obviously, I always say that anyway. So presumably, if you're clicking on this particular episode, you do already know there's a death. But
it'd be weird if you didn't.
Yeah, but just to be clear, it's full spoilers for the episode. So yeah, obviously we start the episode with Lalo, and it does that thing that this show loves to do. It usually does it with Mike, but it's doing it here with Lalo, which is he's up to something. We get like a part of the routine to sort of sell us on the vibe of it, what's going on. But there's a bit of okay, we get that he's down the sewer doing something. We see him coming out of the sewer, and we see him going to get a shower, which I've never actually seen. Obviously, it also had like a laundrette, and obviously that's quite common. I don't know if I've ever seen a place that has like you can just walk in and pay to use the shower, like a public shower. I don't know if I've encountered that myself.
No, me either. No, especially when this place seemed like it was had like a shop at the front, right? Yeah,
like it felt like it was like a mini mart that also had a laundrette attached, which doesn't seem that weird. I mean, I've never seen those things attached, but it doesn't seem unbelievable that someone would throw them together.
Yeah, the public shower aspect is unusual to see.
Maybe this is more common because it's like a desert part of the country, and it's a lot more common to just feel the need to I need a shower.
Maybe. The thing that caught my eye was the sign saying maximum shower 1 hour. Like, wow. The fact that there has to be a sign for that tells you a lot.
If anything, I'm impressed that that's the limit. Like, I'd have thought they'd have put like a 20-minute limit on the bloody thing, not an hour.
Yeah, and I'm like, who has been taking the piss with those showers to that extent?
I mean, I'm pretty guilty of just like taking a long time in the shower because I tend to just like sort of zone out and just sort of...
It's not uncommon for me to do 20-30 minutes of just standing there.
Yeah, just enjoying the hot water, just like thinking about shit. Like,
not in a public shower like that I'm paying for to go and use.
Well, you don't usually do that anyway, regardless of...
No, but like I'm thinking like after you've been to a gym or like a swimming pool or whatever.
Oh yeah, sure.
You go for a shower. You're in there for like a minute, 2 minutes at most, right?
You get in and you get out as quickly because it's awkward. You don't want to stand around other people you don't know showering. It's weird.
Yeah, you get in there, you do your thing, you're gone. It's not like, you'll take your time, you'll relax. The fact that this place has to have an hour limit on their showers is surreal to me.
I
really noticed it. I'm sorry.
I mean, maybe couples go in together and it's just kind of...
That was my assumption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe this includes like drying time, and it includes like, you know, the whole process of...
Maybe.
You know, that was much before.
Still a pretty considerate amount of time. Like, an hour, still plenty of time.
Maybe they know it's not just used for cleaning, so they're just like, you know, we'll accommodate everyone who needs the showers. And give them a generous tip, but not taking the piss.
Yeah.
Okay. But he goes back in, and it's all building up to like, oh, he's out here. We see like the little chair, and he's got like bottles of water. It's like, okay, he's clearly just down here staking out somewhere. Like, where's he looking? So it's that final shot where the camera pans and turns, and you're like, what's across the street? What's across the street? And it's not like a surprising reveal, but it's like, okay, this makes sense. This is the secret lab at the laundrette. We
knew he was on the trail at the lab anyway, so it's not a surprise at all. But there's still a few places this could have been instead.
Yeah, like it wouldn't have like half of me was expecting like Saul's apartment, like block or something like that.
It could have been Gus's house potentially.
Yeah. There was a few places it could have been, but this makes it the most sense of all the places.
Yeah.
So you know, that's kind of where we leave him for now. We come back to him later, and he decides to. Well, he's on the phone to whoever else first, but he phones, you know, Hector at the old folks' home, and I don't know if there was a noise specifically in the hold call that he was noticing that was making him go, "Oh shit, this has been tapped."
There was. Did you not hear it? It's the clicking sound.
I did hear it, but like I wasn't like is this just like a fault of like wiretaps? Is that there's like a known thing that when you're on hold you hear?
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe it's just...
maybe it's just because he phones this number
a lot, so it's new,
right?
Yeah.
And so he notices that it's different, so he's like, "That's not right."
Yeah. I mean, I got what was going on in the scene because the way he hung up and reacted, and then of course the way he then chooses to then call back, and it's very strategical. This is my favorite detail of the whole thing. It's like he figures this out. He's pissed. He smashes a chair up. He has a fit and smashes the chair against the wall, and then he's like. He doesn't. Obviously, this is not verbalized. He just does it, but he clearly thinks, "Oh, let's make them move. If they're monitoring this, then I'm going to give them something to react to." And he phones,
give him a false lead, essentially.
And he tells Hector he's going back to Plan A. And the funny thing is that this could just be mostly gibberish to lure them out, and maybe it is. We don't know if what he does at the end of the episode is actually what Plan A was supposed to be. But at the same time, if it was, it does leave us thinking, "Oh God, what's Plan A?"
Well, Plan A, from what we saw before, the context before was kill Gus, right? Because that was what he wanted to do for sending after him.
That's certainly what Mike and co think as well.
Yes. So I think that's what he wants them to think.
Yeah.
And it's definitely working because, you know, they scramble, all hands on deck.
Yeah, because this is the first time he gets to see Mike. Like, as Mike comes out of the laundrette with the other guys and they're all going to see Gus, and he's like, "Oh, hey, Michael." Anyway, he moves something to himself, and it's like, oh, this is the first time he's even caught a glimpse, because Mike's so good at this that he's not let himself be caught, but this has tricked him. This has tricked him out of the front of the building, and sure enough, like this is like so that's all in your head. And just I think we'll tack on here just the scene with Gus, where Gus is like doing like a charity thing. He's donating money to like a youth, to a youth thing, and Mike shows up and is like, "Look, this phone call was made. We got to take action." And there's a key line here that made my heart sing. He's like, "We've taken all the guys off the low priority targets," and I went, "Oh no!" That's the moment. That's the moment where you're like, I've got a feeling that Lalo's, and not so much that Lalo knew that all the other places that he'd have been like monitored, but certainly the idea
what he's banking on, right?
He's banking on this. They've been so focused on him coming for Gus that anywhere else they might have been looking is now.
Right, and that's why he made the phone call. Like, went through with it and said, "Hey, Plan A," because they think Plan A, correctly, I assume, was kill Gus. So let's, throw everyone at protecting Gus, and that's what he's banging on. Like, everything else is going to be easier.
In a weird way, because Mike's so good at the security thing, he's almost forced Lalo into the unlikely scenario of going to someone like Saul and Kim. because he's sort of like, well, we're protecting the main target too much now, and Lalo's smart enough to notice that. So they're effectively forcing him to get creative and go elsewhere. So while it was unlikely if everything was like equal and there was no protection for him to go to Sol and Kim, he's actually directed them there in a roundabout way. So there's kind of like a cause and effect kind of thing happening.
It is the back and forth of the chess game that they're playing.
So really fascinating. But we'll get to that final scene later. Let's go back. Let's go through the Sol and Kim stuff, which is obviously delightfully entertaining for the first half,
there's a
especially.
moment, like early-ish on that I loved. Because obviously we're finally seeing the plan come together. They're scrambling, to reshoot and stuff. But the moment where I was like, oh, okay, this is great, was when I realized that Howard's PI was on their payroll the whole time.
Yes. It's the moment where he rushes out of the dark room, he hands the photos, and the car that pulls up, you're like, and it's that thing. It's so quick. I was like, wait, was that Howard's PI?
And the next scene is him going and giving the photos to Howard. I'm like, God damn it, this is genius.
And all of a sudden, you kind of like get the whole point is that he sees these photos. He's not actually met this judge before, so when the judge is going to walk in the room, he's going to react in a way that is not going to be favorable. And from there, but to go back, because all the stuff at the start, because we start off this side of stuff with it's the actor who played the judge. He's at his like regular job at the supermarket pushing trolleys and or shopping carts for the Americans, just to translate. And Sol just rushes up and he's like, you have to come in right now. It's like we have to rush like a reshoot right now. It's the day of.
The guy is so committed to his craft. He's there just practicing lines.
Yeah. And he has to grease his palms a little bit and like promise to like defend him with his boss if his boss gets mad that he pissed off for like 3 hours.
Sue him.
In the middle of the day.
Yeah.
But my favorite part of this is that because we were just debating like whether or not the crew were students like a week ago and maybe 2 weeks ago now. So it was actually really funny to me that it cut to the university and our main camera guy is actually the lecturer. He's given the class.
Yeah. It seems like he's in charge of the equipment there, like the cupboard, right? Which is funny because at least in my experience in my uni, the people in charge of the equipment cupboards were relatively recent past students. That they tended to after they graduated, they'd like hire them for a year or two while they did like their masters or something. So
this lines up then, this idea, because it is implied in this scene that he's kind of just filling in for the actual lecturer who's not there for whatever reason. Because the girl puts her hand up and says, "Who so and so told us
what I said."
Said we could use the good cameras. He's like, no, you dweebs don't use the good, because he's describing this like, I mean, obviously it's like a period piece, so this camera that he's like basically fapping over is like a relic now, but I have to imagine Canon like the idea of their camera being like just propped up this, because he's like, oh, this XLR is this beautiful thing and it does this resolution, all these aspect ratios, and then he picks up this old like beta camcorder. He's like, no, this has 340 lines of so-called resolution. That one, I mean, do you know what's funny about this is because I studied and I did TV and film production, right? That's what I did. It's rare that I get to be so inside the baseball and get to pop at these little jokes, but I was really laughing at some of this.
It's his derision. It's like you could use this to shoot your wedding or porn
without the plot.
Yes. Yeah. That was it. Well, that's important to know.
Yeah. Then he hands out depth of field charts and says, "Yeah, you can't create your stories if you're not in focus."
Yeah. There'll be a quiz at the end, probably.
So on a personal level, I get a chuckle out of this just because, like it didn't really mimic any class I ever had. I felt like the way he was doing it, because he's intentionally like a bit of a shitbag the way he's talking to them, but. It's kind of like a construed comedy version of the sort of thing I did go through, so it's just kind of funny. I almost wish my lectures were this animated and like opinionated.
There's the element that rang true for me was that the lectures still had ongoing careers of their own.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So, like, don't get me wrong, they all, when they were in class, they were professional. Like, they would give you a lecture, but they had other stuff going on in the actual career that presumably paid better than what they were doing. This was kind of just like, this is just on the side almost for some of them.
Yeah,
And I felt that this guy here is like, who cares about this measly class? I'm getting paid to go, $500 to go shoot this for like 2 hours or whatever.
yeah, but I presume the actual lecturer who's missing the day is doing like real legitimate work in the industry, as opposed to what he's doing, which is going and getting paid cash in hand from a seedy guy like Jimmy.
I'm sorry, is he getting paid for doing his job?
He's not declaring tax on this.
Is he getting paid for doing things with a camera that is perfectly legal of what he's doing?
It's not legal if he's not declaring it.
Well, okay, assuming he's declaring the money. Assuming that.
Is he invoicing Jimmy for this, do you think? Is there a paper trail?
Hey. Kim tells him to bill him.
True. Maybe there's an actual bill. Sure. No, I mean that tracks, because one of my lecturers actually left just after my third year because he got offered this big prestigious like job to head up a TV studio. So he actually left. I guess it kind of because it goes against that there's an old sort of adage, and this actually ties into Breaking Bad in a way, because the whole idea that Walter was a chemistry teacher because he kind of failed making it as a big time scientist, like an industry.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's that kind of belief that a lot of teachers couldn't make it in the field, so they end up teaching it instead for the next generation to maybe go in and make it better than they did. I think with university professors and lecturers, not all of them, but certainly in the more practical fields, it does kind of feel like, no, the ones that are good at it are working, but they still make time to come in and teach.
In our experience, it seems that they were still had pretty reasonably thriving careers alongside, like even before I went to college. I had a lecturer who did who taught us music history and journalism, and I read something randomly last week, and it was from him. He's still working as a pretty respected music journalist.
Yeah, I mean, and the lectures I had that were kind of just like theirs full time staff were the ones that were a fair bit older, so they did have good careers, but they got to a point maybe where it was a bit too physical to run around doing certain things past a certain age. So it's like, no, I'll just teach it because I can sort of just come to one job and just teach from here, kind of thing. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this is a weird little tangent just based on this.
It is, but like I say, it's something that generally is kind of thrown around, but I don't think it's true in at least in our experience.
I think it's certainly in our more
maybe creative industries, perhaps.
Creative. I would maybe even extend it to something that's like a sort of a trained like set of trade skill, I suppose, in a way. I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, so the point is they're having to reshoot, and like they're dressing this guy back up. Kim shows up and has to like wrap things around his arm to try and make it look like a cast. It's not. I mean, it's not really. In fact, she uses the expensive camera tape, which director man's very upset about.
Yeah, he is not happy. It's like $6 a roll, I think he said.
Yeah. And she's like, Bella's. But also the makeup girl is just randomly dressed as an elf.
a gelfling.
Technically, yes.
From Dark Crystal.
She does specify it's from Dark Crystal, yeah. So I assume...
Once she said it, I was like, oh yeah, that is exactly what that is.
Yeah, well, I assume someone in the show is a fan of that then, and that's why this is what was picked.
Probably. Or it was just, hey, we got this costume, knock it around.
I mean, possibly. I don't think they have to worry about the rights here, though, because this is I think this would just fall under like a reference parody kind of thing. This is not,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, this is not like something they have to actually pay for.
Because they're not showing any footage or anything like that. It's just a costume.
No. Yeah, it's just a costume. Yeah. So, yeah. So they're taking this photo. Kim rushes in and like helps with it, and like it's a bit stressful. And they're like I say, you're in the dark room and the photos are being developed, and they start sprinkling this stuff all over it. Obviously, it became clear it was what the vet gave them, the drug.
Yeah, that was something I was wondering about, because I was like, how are they going to get it into his system? I didn't realize it would just absorb through the skin.
Yeah. And we also didn't know that the PI was going to be handing them stuff to hold as well. So that was also the information we were not privy to yet. So sure enough, we get this scene where Hamlin sits down, looks at the photos, and he's like, yeah, inquire into this. And of course, this is like, oh, this package looks the same as the money that Saul took out of the bank. So the whole point is that it looks like he's paying off this judge. And that's when you're like, okay, I'm now getting where this is going.
All of a sudden, it's like, this is very clever.
Yeah. There's a great little scene, though, with Hamlin and like one of the new employees, because the new employees like, and he just stock the fridge. He's doing the grunt work and he's in with some drinks, and he spills some of them. And Hamlin's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll give you a hand." And he's helping him. And it's this is like a twofold thing. One, it makes us feel guilty because we know what they were about to do to him, and then by the end of the episode, it's double guilty because shit, like this, it's making us like Hamlin before he dies, and that is, it's good writing, but it is heartbreaking in hindsight. But he he's helping this guy, he's getting to know his name, and he's being nice to him, and he brings up Chuck, there's a big portrait of Chuck, because the
guy's like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, he trained him how to do this thing with the can. So the tip I was always taught was to tap the can after you drop it to stop
unreliable in my experience.
Yeah. Oh, I don't drop that many cans, so I don't think I've
I do.
Fair enough. But maybe you should try this technique then. The spin
next time I will.
Yeah, spin it in the table a few times.
It doesn't spin it that fast either. No,
he just kind of swivels it nice and slowly, and then he opens it and takes a swig, and he's all proud of himself.
I thought it was a nice touch. It like that it was ginger ale, and not because of anything particular that has, but ginger ale is often used as a substitute for people who don't want to drink beer or alcohol in general. And given that this is dealing with him being framed with drug use, I thought it was a nice touch to kind of have him use that drink specifically as opposed to anything else that could be in a can.
Yeah, it's like pointing out that this drug thing is so untrue. Like he's as far as possible from it in some ways.
And it's not like he doesn't drink. Clearly he does, and that's fine. But it was this here that highlighted that, it just had that extra layer.
It would certainly be rich.
Yes, I would say that's fine. Yes, yes, I'm aware. Shut up.
So,
God damn it.
Come on, you set yourself up for that.
I did, but that wasn't what I was getting at. My point was it was perfectly normal and healthy to have a drink as long as it's not a problem.
What's in that glass?
It's actually iced tea.
That's what you say.
Screw you, it's half iced tea, half tropical.
That may be worse.
It's very nice, actually. It's probably really bad for me. It's like all sugar.
So we get this little scene to make us like Hamlin again, and then he's told by his assistant that the PI's there, and that leads to the photo scene, and it's all going well. And there's another great little scene to make us like him, right? Where the old lady's there, the representative for all the oldies in the case, and he's being nice to her. Although I noticed a little parallel here that I thought was quite interesting. Was the sort of asking her to go in a wheelchair, and she says, "I don't need the wheelchair. I'm fine, I can walk." But it kind of felt, it was almost like a Jimmy tactic to be like, no, this looks better. This will be more sympathetic if you come in a wheelchair. That's what it felt like, a Jimmy move to me. This little moment, which I don't think is to point out that he's like Jimmy. I think it's just to point out that what Jimmy is kind of, there's a little bit of that does exist in the lawyer world. Like it's not completely detached.
It's that Jimmy's a lawyer.
Yeah.
He does these things for a reason. They're not just there for the sake of it.
So I really like that touch, and I think it's neat because when Hamlin makes his big speech later to them, I think it's important that he does. He's in this world. He recognizes what they are. He recognizes what Jimmy is. He has a foot in the door, so he understands it, and he's speaking from a place of knowledge and authority. And I think that's a really cool little touch. But they go out to the meeting. Schreiker's there. Everyone's all happy. Ed Bailey Jr.'s there, and they're all shaking hands. They're happy as can be. And of course, we see Saul and Kim are listening because it's a conference call. All the they got the number last time and they're listening. They got the phone out and just sitting listening. They're rubbing their hands together, not literally but figuratively. And they bring in the mediator, the ex-judge. And the way that Hamlin turns in his chair, everyone else is looking and smiling with this sense of like kindness but respect, and this is a prominent figure in our system. And
thanks for coming. Yeah.
And Hamlin's just staring daggers, like he's
what the F is going on?
And he's starting to have the effects. He's feeling warm from the drug. His pupils are dilated, but at least certainly by the end of the scene they're pretty dilated. And he starts to say, "No, we can't do this today. We have to sort of reconvene." And they're all like, "We're going to have to give us some reasons for that." And it's drawn out of him what he's thinking, what he's accusing.
I love where he goes, he keeps talking about compromise, and I say he is compromised.
And he's like, How dare
away
you?
he goes.
And of course, this guy's completely innocent, so he is genuinely like insulted and is like, "What are you talking about? I arrived in town this morning and I went and got some lunch. It was nice. Got a latte, and then I came here, and he starts just and he eventually brings up Jerry McGill. And what's so great about this is obviously Egg Bailey Jr. is the one that's been, prodded and like given all these little glimpses and clues of what he might be going through. So he's seeing the pupils, he's seeing the erratic behavior, and he says, "This is Jimmy. Jimmy did this," and tells his assistant he'll get the photographs. And the judge is like, "Oh, I'm excited to see these. I can't wait."
Yeah, and I was like, "There's a moment here, you're like, okay, how is he going to explain? You just go, well, that's clearly not me. You're wondering how he's going to pull it off, right?"
Yeah, because the problem here is that, yeah, I think they would believe him if he says that's not him, because they would look at it closely and go, yeah, there's actually some inconsistencies here. But the problem with that is then all of a sudden Hamlin looks like, okay, well, Hamlin's justified then, so what's going on? I mean, he's not justified in his accusations, but he's justified when he says Jimmy's doing all this stuff to set him up.
Yes.
So she comes back, and then you get the camera angle is, it's from behind the photograph, looking at just Hamlin's eyes over the top of it, and you just see his eyes go, and you're like, oh god, somehow like the PI or someone switched them. They've switched them somehow. Yeah. And sure enough, they got a second batch of photos where it's the long-haired like sound guy. Which, by the way, can I just say, I loved him holding the little branch as if it was a boom mic, just in so it's in the foreground of the camera shot.
Yeah, just to give it some coverage so it looked like a natural photo.
I love the idea that he holds the boom mic, so therefore he's good at holding anything of a similar size and shape.
Yeah. I love the idea behind it though, is like, oh, so now it looks like the pictures are from behind this bush, so it looks like the PI was hiding as he took the pictures. Genius. Again, this is so well thought out.
So sure enough, like, well, that's meant to be me, and it's this long-haired, guy. I mean, maybe
something else entirely that's definitely not that envelope.
Nah, they put the fake mustache on him, which I think is really funny. It's this idea that all he saw was the mustache. I thought that was him. That's what it looks like. So funny.
It's just this is the peak of this whole plan. This is what this has been building to for this first half of the season, and it all pays off here. And it's like, yes, this is worth it all.
Do you know what I love about it though? Is obviously like the meeting falls apart. Stryker tells Bagley that we're going back to our first offer, and because of this charade, like basically we're just going to drop it $1 million each day, forcing them to accept the deal right now because it's only going to get worse. So it's kind of working, and Bagley goes to Hamlin, says we're going to have to accept this deal. But I genuinely love that Hamlin, now that he's seen the whole plan play out and he's thought about it, he does kind of get he figures most of it out. He just can't prove it. He just can't like convince someone else of it. And even if he could, I mean, Bagley Jr. even says, even if this is all true, even if I believe you, it doesn't matter now. Like this deal has fallen apart. It won't necessarily.
Like, we'll fight it in court, and it's like, yeah, but I might believe you, but are the rest of the partners going to? Because this sounds pretty far-fetched.
And are the clients going to survive long enough to actually see the victory?
Yeah. So,
like, Hamlin's lost, but he figures it out. He's smart enough. That's what I really like about this, the way they've handled his character through this, is that he can't predict things. He can't outthink what they're planning because it's so elaborate, and like, who would think of all these details?
Once he's got it, he can take the steps backwards. Like, oh, they made us change the number we have for our PI agency.
Yeah. That was a great detail because I don't think they need to explain it, but I was glad they kind of did, because it was like, oh, that's a neat detail that's how he got his PI in there.
So yeah, it's not like he hired a legitimate one and then Jimmy paid him more to switch sides or anything like that. It's like, no, he was planted from the start. Yeah,
no, that was a great detail. So Hamlin, when he comes over, and this is the thing, it does that thing with the candle flickers, so it cuts to Saul and Kim. In fact, there's a moment actually just at the end of all this when the conference call is still going, where they're just like making out on the couch. They're just like,
and I love this kind of gets called out a little bit later when Hamlin's over.
He says,
he realizes, you don't do this for money, you do it for fun. You get off on this, and it's like, oh, you have no idea how literally.
Yeah, I think what was so great about this, and this is bringing up Chuck, because the best episode of the show still might be chicanery, right? Which was the payoff to everything that was building up with Chuck in season 3. And in some ways, this is kind of a sequel spiritually to that, in the sense that we've been building up to this for a while, and the difference is this time is Kim's in on it, and it's mainly Kim's brainchild in a lot of ways, this one.
She's kind of evil.
Yeah. I think what's so good about this is that bringing up Chuck the way, there'd been a point of having him brought up in some way to remind us of Chuck. Partly because, when later on when Hamlin comes over and he frames, he's like, no, I knew what you were like. Chuck knew what you were like, and I sort of learned it through him and like along working with you. And the candle flickers as the door chaps, which is a bit ominous. I did like it flickering the second time, because the second time made a lot of sense, because clearly Lalo opens the door and that's what creates the wind.
The first time it does it to teach us
that
this is what happens, and there was a moment where I thought maybe it was going to be Lalo immediately.
So I thought it was Lalo, the first chap as well.
And you're like, oh, it's Howard. Okay, fine. And it's when you see it the second time, where as an audience, because we're facing, the camera's looking at Jimmy and Kim at this point, so from the doorway perspective, essentially. So we don't see it open, we don't see anyone walk in, but we just see the candle, and we know that the door's just gone again. It's really clever. Yeah,
it's opened. Yeah. So it's just funny because it almost feels too theatrical and too, pantomime almost for this show. But it does actually make sense that the wind of the door opening, and I say wind, loosely. I just mean a small gust.
The draft that it creates. Yeah. It's pretty natural for it to do that.
But before we get to that ending, I actually do think the scene before that is wonderful.
Magnificent.
Hamlin coming in and just being like, I know you did this. Like, this took planning. And Saul and Kim will never admit to it, right, in the scene. They're playing dumb the whole time. But Hamlin, he just knows, and he's not going to pretend that they might not be guilty of this. Like, he's just, no, I'm going to talk like you've done this, because I know you've done this. And the way he chews them out, and it's perfect, because not only is he right in a lot of what he says, not only is he right when he says things like, this is not just putting a bowling ball onto my car. This is not, some of this shit you've done before. Like, why did you do this? Is it because I sided with Chuck too much? Is it because I have things too easy? Is it because this? And, and I do love that he brings up that his marriage is falling apart and that he's like, his life's in a bit of chaos right now. And it's just a little thing just to let them know that, he's going through a pretty shitty time right now, and you've done this to him. So they get to know that before, the ultimate sad ending. But it's when he turns to Kim, he says, Jimmy, this is what you are. Chuck knew it. You can't help yourself. But he turns to Kim and chews her out because she should be better than this. And what have we been talking about for the last 2 seasons at this point? Is that Saul's drawing her in, and that's the tragedy at this point of the show, is that she's been taken down with him into this world.
Yeah, it is awful. Right, and that's kind of what we've been saying for, like I said, 2 seasons. This is awful to watch. This happen to her, and Howard's just calling it out now. Yeah,
he's voicing what many of us in the audience are thinking, and it's so good. And then he's immediately killed. He's immediately killed.
I love how, because he's pretty drunk at this point already.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, let's call you a cab and get you home. And obviously Lalo comes in, and they immediately, stiffen in fear.
Oh yeah, they're terrified. Like, I love their reaction. They are shit.
Understandably. And they're like, Howard, go. Just leave before you get involved in this. Like they're really genuine, like, please just get out of here.
Yeah. And of course Lalo, I don't even just think it's because Hamlin was taking too long to leave. I think he just wanted to make it clear how serious he's about to be. Like, this is the example. Because he doesn't care who this is. He's just going to do it because he's making it clear that I will do this.
I think it's convenient for him to have no witnesses as well.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't think that's the ultimate point. I think it is the fear tactic.
Yeah. And it's a hell of a cliffhanger to leave us on this mid-season.
There was a point during this scene where I was like, God damn it, this is the last scene. Like, you can kind of dawned on you.
Yeah. I kind of felt that, and it's funny because, we've talked about, how this mid-season should end. We kind of got it right, that Lalo showing up properly was going to be the moment. And we, debated about how much we should see of him beforehand. And it's funny because you could argue that having not seen him all episode, then just having him walk in and do this at the end would have had, a complete shock value to it. But at the same time, I do think it's worth sort of in favor of the episode debating the idea that him, doing the diversion, saying I'm going to plan A, and knowing that he's going to do something does add to this level of fear before
I think
things happen.
While I kind of agree with what you're saying, I think ideally, if it was me, I wouldn't have had any of the scenes with Lalo over the last few episodes at all.
Mm.
I'd have cut them entirely. But to have that same effect, I'd have had, I'd have still had Mike show Gus that recording, of the phone call. So we still hear that as an audience. We know, oh shit, he's back in town. I'd have maybe had him word it a little bit differently to make it a little bit clearer that no, he's here. This is happening now.
Well, they didn't have to because we already knew he was there, obviously.
Right, but if we hadn't seen that, is kind of what I'm getting at. If we hadn't seen that at all, and the only way we knew that he was back was we were in the exact same position as Gus and Mike, I feel like that would have been quite powerful in itself to keep us on their side as well, and keep Lalo this real mystery and what's he up to, and then have this return at the end might have been even more impactful, perhaps. But that said, I've still enjoyed most of the Lalo stuff that we've had, so I'm not mad about it.
Oh yeah, and I think everything this episode was the best it's been. I'm not even counting the ending. I just mean all the stuff before the ending, with the phone call, him figuring that out, and all that stuff was really good and well done. And I think it's a testament to, regardless of that debate and what is slightly better, I don't think there's any hint of us saying that this final scene was extremely effective and worked entirely. And Hamlin being killed like this, it does really give you this feeling that anyone who isn't in Breaking Bad, Kim's the only one who might survive. I mean, not counting minor characters like the film crew and stuff like that, but out of the main characters, Nacho's dead, Hamlin's dead, Chuck died seasons ago. Kim is the only one who might survive out of the non-Breaking Bad character, unless I'm missing someone that I'm not thinking of. But out of all the main faces.
Yeah, I would assume Lalo lives just because of, again, going back to Jimmy's.
Oh yeah, I wasn't counting Lalo because he's the villain. I was thinking just in terms of the characters we were rooting for, in some way.
Not that many others though left, really, is there?
No, that's what I was thinking. Is that this final season's really taking them out, and Hamlin's not a character that needed to die, which I think's. I mean, not a natural needed to die per se, but you could kind of see that as being a natural end to his story. I think what makes Hamlin a bit more shocking is he was not a part of this world. And I think one of the interesting things we were talking about last week was the idea that this might make his marriage worse because of what happens to him. This might make that strain, and it might ruin his life in ways they didn't predict. Now obviously this isn't as direct.
It's a weird tenuous indirect link that he only came to their apartment because they did it.
No, it is a little bit more tenuous, but at the same thing, I still think it works in the sense that he's only there for a start because of them and what they did, and he gets him killed, right? So that's still there, which is a little bit more tenuous than his wife now looks at him even worse than she did before because it looks like he's spiraling out of control, and that just makes her run for good, kind of thing.
Yeah,
but I think the fact that he brings up his marital troubles and admits that he's been staying in the guest house and these things before then, I think they're already feeling guilty a little bit for what they've done to him.
They do share a look.
Yeah. There's a moment of oh shit, and it made me think back to Chuck's mentally unfit. What's your excuse? Remember that moment and being shit.
You mean one of the best moments of the entire show?
Yeah, it was one of the best moments of the entire show, and it made us feel guilty. And I think that's the genius thing about this, if you think about it, is that when we went into chicanery, we were so on Saul's side. We were yes, take down Chuck. He's the villain of the show, and he wasn't really, but he's the villain of the show. And then it said, no, you're wrong for just rooting for Saul in this situation. That's not fair to Chuck. He has a mental disability, and you were rooting against him. And I think this time getting into this stuff with Hamlin, I think it's done a really great job of us recognizing that this is kind of a similar feeling getting into it, but we're well aware and feel the tragedy of what they're doing to him.
Yeah, I think it's smarter because, like I said, we know this time, and it makes us more like Kim.
It does, yeah.
We know this is the wrong thing, but we're enjoying it anyway. You get caught up in the plan. We've talked about how genius this plan was, how great it was to see it pulled off because it's exciting. But it was a shitty thing to do, right? No doubt about that. and it kind of makes us more like him, where she knows what the right and wrong thing to do is more than Jimmy does. But she's kind of fallen into the recently.
Yeah, it's a really smart thing where in some ways Hamlin represents part of the audience here because it chews Kim out, but at the same time Kim represents us as well because of how we feel about, like, we're kind of into it but we know it's wrong.
Yeah.
And in many ways you could argue that with who the audience is represented by has bounced around like effortlessly from character to character depending on like where we are in the story and who it makes the most sense for us to latch onto.
Very difficult from a writing perspective because usually you have, this is your audience viewer character where everything kind of goes through that lens and it's easy and it just stays that way until you introduce a new character that it is. Whereas this has been back and forth over various characters. It's not just every time we introduce a new character it's them, because it's been older character, like this season here it's been Hamlin. Hamlin's been around since the start of the show. He definitely was not our viewer character for a long time.
No, not at all.
I mean, the first season, he was the the bad guy of the show.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the thing. If you go back and watch the show from the start now, and you think about how bad you're going to feel when Hamlin's killed now, and like I need to reiterate, this is that he was not part of this world. He did not deserve this death. This was a cruel death that he should not have been anywhere near, but it happened to him anyway. And that's what makes it, a bit more shocking than, say, Nacho's, where you kind of see his story building up to something like that the whole time. It kind of felt like it was going that way.
Yeah, it would have been more like Nacho's dad.
Yeah, it would have been the heartbreaking thing, yeah. I think making a character that we have had complex feelings for in different ways, where we've went from thinking he's maybe more of an antagonist to being, no, he's actually more sympathetic and he's more of a decent human being, and now we feel bad, and because that was a lot of last season, was us feeling bad that Saul's been a prick to him. It was why, because we usually still kind of side with Saul a lot of the time, and we sort of understand why he's motivated to do things, but he did just feel like he was being a bit of a prick to Hamlin.
Yeah, a lot of the last couple of seasons where he was just being petty and went too far, and we were like, it was the point where I don't know if you noticed. I noticed sometime during this season, the reviews, we've been calling him Saul a lot more than we have Jimmy.
Possibly.
I think no, we have. I noticed both of us doing it.
I feel like I've always called him Saul though throughout the whole show.
No, I don't. I think it's been more in the last season or two, because I think we made a conscious effort earlier on in the show not to, because he felt like someone else. Whereas since he's had that moment where he's not just changed his name, but where he's felt like, no, this is Saul now, and he's gotten a bit shadier, even by his standards, and more like Saul from Breaking Bad. We've kind of slipped into thinking of him more as Saul, I think, subconsciously. Yeah,
but still far more layered than he ever was in Breaking Bad.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, that's the benefit of having an entire show for yourself, right?
There's so much to kind of like unraveling your feelings here, because it's a relatively quick, like, obviously the moment where Lal comes in is a minute before the episode ends at that point, but there's so much to unravel here because you're feeling the catharsis of Hamlin just calling them on their shit. And even though we're kind of implicit because we were following along with the journey and the excitement of the plan, it's like at the same time, we kind of agree that this should be chewed out for this, and we're kind of on Hamlin's side here. And the episode and some of the scenes with Hamlin to give us sympathy, whether it's at the therapy office, whether it's at his home with his wife, or in this episode, him just being good to this young person and being like, and not even, because part of me almost thought he might make a turn. Like, see, when he said I didn't know who Chuck was, I thought, maybe he's going to turn and be a little bit of a dick now, because he's like, how dare you not know who, like, the M and HHM are. But no, he's understanding, he tells him who it is, and sort of, like, speaks about how great he was, and
that's about it,
yeah. Then the young guy's like, I hope, someone says something like that about me one day. And, it's a nice little moment, and it's done a good job of reminding us that this is a human being that they are playing with, that they are toying with, and they do get off on it. We see them literally getting off on it in the background at the end of the call. And I think when we get to the end of the scene, like, it's all very entertaining, but there is kind of a part of us that go, I don't know if I feel proud about what they've just done. Whereas when Chicanery ended, obviously we got the hard-hitting kind of like other side of it, like the episode after, but when Chicanery ended, it felt like a victory. It felt like, let's do jumping jacks and cartwheels and somersaults.
It wasn't until afterwards that you kind of went, shit.
Yeah.
But this time we've known the whole time that This is different. This has not been the right thing to do, but we get suckered into it anyway because it's fun.
That said, they did have that little comic relief moment of the old lady going, "Is this how these things usually go?"
Yeah.
Which was a little chuckle moment.
It was.
But yeah, I mean, obviously it's an extremely good episode. I don't think it tops Chicanery. I think I like. I mean, obviously there's other episodes that may be in contention as well, but my gut reaction, looking at the 9.9 that it currently has on IMDb, is that I would put Chicanery above this one if I'm comparing.
Unless Chicanery has as a 10.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to check now. Now you've said that, I'm going to go to.
I suspect it does not, but that would be the only way that is fair. I mean, but let's be honest, that wouldn't be the first time we have disagreed with some IMDb ratings, would it?
9.7.
You know what? That's fair. That probably is a 9.7. I'm willing to.
Well, to be fair, this one's only a couple of days old. It'll probably nudge down a little as more ratings.
This drops down to like a 9.3, 9.4.
Yeah.
I can allow it.
Yes, but
9.9 is a bit high.
It's yeah, I mean, it's really it's such a hard episode to. Like, obviously we'll sit here and wax lyrically about how all the characters have come together and the cause and the effect of the actions, the reactions, the guilt and the motivations, and like everything's crescendo together here really nicely, and obviously it gives us this cliffhanger to be excited. It really has
felt like a genuine like mid-season break.
Yeah,
they've built that really nicely.
Yeah, well, they knew. Yeah, because this felt like a story this first half, and this was definitely a cliffhanger ending to chew on for a bit.
100%.
So obviously looking forward to July to getting back to this.
Yeah, it's what, like 6-7 weeks, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, it's not too long, but it's a break.
Long enough that you feel it.
But it's not the year of the toilet seat cliffhanger.
It is not. No, I will give them that. This is in every way better than that. But man, 6 weeks still.
Yes, but is the cliffhanger itself better than that?
Probably not. But this is a very good cliffhanger.
Yeah,
and I
would agree.
A lot.
And I think the reason why I would say that the toilet seat, and I mean, just in case anyone's not watched Breaking Bad, I guess I'm being somewhat vague. But the toilet seat cliffhanger, I think the reason why it just nudges a bit over is because that is like this earth-shattering thing to that character that completely changes like what that last half of that season is going to be.
Also, that's like 5 seasons in the making. This is 2 seasons at most.
Yes. So but we're comparing like I don't know, like a 9.7 to a 9.9 here in terms of
yeah, like no, don't wrong
comparison.
This is about as damn good as you could have asked for, like as a cliffhanger. Like I can't imagine anything that I would have wanted instead of this. The
funny thing about this is that when it comes to a show like Better Call Saul, it's had this lineage now, and it's had Breaking Bad before, which I do think is genuinely one of the best shows of all time. Saul may actually be better than Breaking Bad.
I think it's definitely been more consistent.
So I think we're at this point here where you could almost sound negative talking about a fantastic episode like this, because the perfection that we're comparing it to, that it's already hit, the standard is so absurdly high that coming out of this and going, it's not quite the best episode, but it's like in that top 10 conversation for sure.
Oh god, yeah.
Almost sounds like a negative statement, but this was fantastic from start to finish.
Brilliant. And everything about it is, I think it's done about as well as I could have asked for. Like, barring maybe, okay, we completely reshuffled the season and do the Lalo stuff differently. But then that's asking for a completely different show at that point almost.
Yeah. But yeah, it's the moment Mike says they've taken the men off the low priority targets. It's just like, oh god, that means Saul and Kim are...
I think maybe at most I could have asked for an extra scene of them in the house with Gus kind of, being impatient, him psyching himself up and kind of waiting and nothing happening. Maybe that would have been a nice scene to have in there.
My argument against that, there's a small one, but my argument against that is that if you cut to that and you see him waiting anxiously, and then you cut to like Saul and Kim like chilling in the apartment, I would know as soon as that scene started, this is where Lalo's showing up. Yeah,
you have to have something else in between them.
I think the way it did it here, where you get that scene at the school where they're having this conversation, because it's not like a direct setup to the very next. Because when it cut to Saul and Kim, it is a long enough scene that I thought, oh, there'll be another scene after this, so I didn't necessarily jump to, oh, this is definitely where Lalo's showing up. But had it cut from like Saul like, anxiously waiting and like tapping or something, like looking out the window, being like, oh, he's coming any minute now. It would have like the editing would have told me that he was coming in the other scene.
I agree. Like if you'd done that, you'd have to have had another scene in between them to avoid your mind immediately going to it, and that does, okay, that's then what's that scene, right? So you've got to create something there. So I haven't, and maybe they even did film that, and for this very reason they cut it out. It's very possible.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, maybe they said this is just too on the nose the way it transitions to this.
Yeah.
And not that there's not some good things to have, and we had the axe transition last week, which was very on the nose but really good.
Yeah. But you don't want to ruin that final scene, especially when it's your mid-season cliffhanger. You want to keep that impact.
Yeah, and of course Lalo's smiling as he says, "That's talk."
Yeah. I think the real effective part of how this works as a reveal for us as an audience as well, that this is the Lalo scene, is we've already thought, oh, this is going to be Lalo when the door knocks, and then it's not, so our guard is lowered, and then he just walks in, like he just intrudes into the scene later on.
You don't expect like him to show up when Hamlin's there, in the sense that like they're just
those worlds don't collide.
Yeah,
usually.
they're separate worlds. Yeah, so you don't really think about it. I will say, having seen the spoiler, there's a death. I did predict who it was. Like my number one choice was correct. I guessed Hamlin. It was just purely because, like, well, everyone else needs to survive to the finale. Like that was my logic, because he's the only one out of the main cast. Because the headline on Deadline was so and so is asked about spoiler redacted's death, and I'm like, so I knew it wasn't a minor character. You're not doing an article asking about a character's death.
Could have been. Maybe they killed Cliff.
Well, no. The only other guess, and this was less likely, but the reason why it was possibility is they were asking Rhea Seehorn, so part of me thought, are they going to do a shock Kim death, like, in the middle of this? Because I was like... And it was that thing where it cut to
you know what? It's a sort of thing where you say, no, they wouldn't do that, but I can see the back half of the season in the...
Like, Saul after...
that.
Saul after Kim's death. Because it cut to the apartment and the candle flickers, and I'm like, oh no, they're too happy. Oh no! Like that still works for what happens anyway. But I was like, oh no.
There's a moment where like I can definitely see, I'm glad they didn't, because I want more Kim, obviously. But there would definitely be a storytelling benefit to, we killed Kim here, and the final 6 episodes is just the aftermath of Saul really going in the deep end.
Yeah, and I would buy that he would go further in the deep end because of
100%.
Yeah, like dying. Like that would like it would give him a vicious side, I think. A mean side that would never go away, and he does kind of have a mean side in Saul, so or in Breaking Bad, so that makes sense. So, but no, I do want to just compliment again their because the way it shoots it, where we're behind Hamlin looking at them when Lalo walks in, and the way we see them just sort of like hold each other and like cower back in fear, and like just absolute shock, like who it is.
There's no one else it can be.
And it plays wonderfully, and there's not a doubt in their minds that Hamlin's in danger because he's standing there talking.
I love, obviously, something we're going to have to address when it comes back is Kim knew that Lalo's alive.
Oh yeah,
but Jimmy didn't, so his reaction is even worse.
Oh yeah, he's like seeing a ghost.
He says, how, like something to that effect, like how are you even alive? Like, he genuinely is like just so caught off guard. At least Kim had something in the back of her mind that maybe this was possible.
Somehow he's going to have to like butt dial Mike.
That's the thing. I was like, how are they going to get this to Mike? Like, and I don't, because they've pulled that before, and I don't know if they can do it again.
I don't think they can do it like immediately. I feel like Lalo's going to rope them into something where they're scared for their lives for a while until, because I mean the hope is the happy ending is that Kim does like course correct and leave this path. If she survives.
Well, you do have to think this moment was this is what has...
This is the wake-up call.
Terrified her out of it.
Yeah.
You hope, yeah.
Yeah. I think she's going to be in too much shock and in too much danger to consider that for a few episodes, probably. But yeah, I think that's, this is the moment that'll have triggered the chain of events.
So, yeah. I hope so.
Well, there you go. That's the mid-season finale. Unsurprisingly, it was excellent, and we now have to wait a month and a half for, not even that really, it's a wee bit less than that, but for the final 6 episodes of Better Call Saul, which will be heartbreaking to wait for. It'll be heartbreaking to watch them. It'll be bittersweet watch. Do you know what? Because it only happens every once in a while, but there's something really special about sitting down for the final episode of a show that's you've loved, has been great, it is like still good at the end, and it's like you're saying goodbye to it with on its own terms. Like there's something special about that feeling.
Especially a show that's been going for years. Yeah, when it's like a show that's only a couple of seasons in, it's still sad, but it's not the same. Well, this is what 6-7 years at this point. It'll be.
Yeah. 2015. I want to say it started.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
And then with this one, you can kind of add on Breaking Bad in a weird way because we've been in this universe since 2008. I mean, I didn't start watching in 2008. I caught up like I think between seasons 4 and 5, but like it's been going that long. It's been this part of our lives to some extent for the better part, or for some people more than a decade. So, like, yeah, there will be that feeling. There'll be that wait to sitting down for that final episode and seeing how they end this story.
Yeah, it's got a lot to live up to.
It does,
and I have a lot of confidence in it pulling it off. Still,
it'll be very interesting because I mean, just Breaking Bad for a second here. Like, I think the finale of Breaking Bad is really good, but it's definitely not the highlight of the show. You know, it's kind of a nice ending that works as a conclusion. I actually think the ending of the penultimate episode is like my favorite moment out of the last couple of episodes. If you remember, spoilers for Breaking Bad if you've not seen Breaking Bad here, but you know, this is a spin-off of that show. But if you remember, the penultimate episode ends. He's about to turn himself in. He's about to make a call and turn himself in.
Oh yeah.
And it's his dickhead ex-partner who says that Walter wasn't important to our company. You know, his name contributed, but that was it. And then the main theme kicks in as like the authorities show up to arrest him. And it's like the main Breaking Bad themes is we just see the glasses left there on the counter. It's like, no, Walter's coming for a blaze of glory. He's not going out quietly. And it really it felt like a payoff to who the character is at this point. So, you know, for me, I'll be looking for that moment. Not necessarily something that mirrors that, but just like
that feeling
of like, this is Saul Goodman, and he is like, somehow he's going to win as Saul Goodman at the end, and in some way.
But in true Saul fashion, it has to be a compromised victory.
Like the judge said, compromise. Yeah. Hey, maybe thematically that speech the judge gave about how he likes compromise is.
Maybe it's important because he tells everyone in the room's going to hate him. Maybe that was Vince Gilligan. By the end of this, you're all going to hate him. None of you are going to get what you want. What's he going to get it anyway?
What's he going to do to Kim, that bastard?
Yeah,
he's going to destroy us all.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Alright, let us know what you thought of the mid-season finale in the comments below. Do like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters for mail_fuzz for channel updates, and of course, if you want to support all the content, you can do so by going to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and support us for as little as $1 per month over there and get some bonuses for your trouble, or hit the thanks button on the video as well. But otherwise, that is us, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?